Thanks for being here today, Ethan.
Thank you
I
for taking the time.
Yeah, I'm so excited. And for those of you who don't know us, I'm Cata Simonett, and I'm interviewing today Mr. Ethan Cortez because we have some really important questions and we'd love to learn from you and your expertise. And also, more importantly, just why do you do what you do? So, first of all, if you're not aware yet, Ethan is an awesome real estate agent in Denver, and you can tell us your areas, right? Where are your areas?
Well, I like to serve everywhere in the Front Range from Fort Collins all the way down to the Springs, and then a little bit in the mountains like Evergreen, Conifer, Bailey, a little bit, towards Denver, but not too far out.
Nice. The best areas. Oh man, I
Heck
love
yeah.
Bailey. Yeah, all that. Okay, so what is the story behind real estate? I know that you've shared a little bit with me about what you did prior to getting into real estate. And I love it because it ties so well together and it brings your expertise from another area into real estate. Can you walk us through that a little bit? Why did you get into real estate?
Well, before I was an agent, I'll start there. I used to do industrial hygiene type work in commercial and residential properties. And that included asbestos testing, mold testing, and lead testing. Usually, whether someone's doing like a remodel project or they had a water or fire in their home. And so I kind of bring that experience of knowing how buildings are put together, knowing how to identify potential issues with like water intrusion in homes. That way, if I'm working with a buyer, I know what to look for so that they can use that as a negotiation tool. Or if I'm working with a seller, to make sure that it gets fixed so that on the other side, the buyer doesn't ask for an unreasonable amount of money off on the price. If it can, save them $10,000 to spend 2,000, those are some of the things that as an agent you should be able to catch.
Beautiful. I love that. That's a
Thank you.
secret weapon, basically.
Yeah, there's a lot of agents out there who don't know how homes are kind of put together. They understand the contracts, the relationship, the negotiation, but they don't have a working idea of the systems within a home. And then to answer your question, why I got into real estate, the first person that I ever met who was in real estate was my cousin, and he works in Olympia, Washington. And I spent a little bit of time in Tacoma, and that was kind of my first time meeting him when I was living there, and I got to see what it looks like at a high level for someone who's very successful within real estate. He's got a house in a nice HOA. He's got, family, a stay-at-home wife. He's a member of the yacht club. He's a member of it, a high member of it, within his church. So I got to kind of see what it looks like when you're very successful, and just kind of how working for yourself looks like for someone who spent, most of their adult life working a 9 to 5.
I love it. It's always important to have that vision in front of you to know what that looks like to make it happen. So, that being said, I'm curious about if you've ever had a moment where you're like, yes, I'm really making a difference, and that just kind of like lights you up with what you do.
I say that, my second client that I worked with, my second like ever client, he was going through a separation, and going through a separation can be difficult for people because if their money is tied up within a mortgage, sometimes it could be difficult to get a second one. And so I was able to work with him and my lender, and we strategically placed him within this condo where they kind of moved a little bit of things around to make it possible for him to be able to afford it. And
Mm.
it made me feel good because then I placed him out of a toxic situation and put him into a new home. And now he's just very happy where he's at. And that made me feel really good that, you know, instead of getting him into an apartment, which, it seems to be the easy thing and the quick thing, we were able to, within a couple of months, get him within a condo so he can get out of that situation.
Amazing. That is so huge. And now he's able to be not wasting his money on rent and in a new environment. I mean, when you look at how important the one of my mentors teaches about the 9 environments of you, and your physical space is very important. over willpower, right? I mean, just being able to have your space physically support what you're manifesting in the world is a really big deal.
Especially
That's
when you go from
awesome.
being a homeowner and having to, make a drastic life change and move. Um, you never want to go backwards, and paying rent to somebody is basically paying someone else's mortgage. And to be able to keep him as a homeowner within a condo is pretty big.
Absolutely. Good work.
Thank you.
What's one thing in real estate that keeps you fired up even when it's tough? Because we all know that markets shift and change and it's a constant evolution. So, is there some words of wisdom or advice that you live by or that maybe someone has shared with you?
The words of wisdom that you got to get used to as a real estate agent or just any business owner is being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Especially in real estate, you see the best and the worst of people. When you're working with divorced clients, or when it's a probate situation and the property needs to sell because the owner had passed. Those are never easy things to be a part of. And leading with like kindness, compassion, and empathy, it goes a long way when the person on the other side, whether it be your client or person that's putting in an offer on the property that you represent, doing so professionally and ethically is really important. And sometimes you have to have those uncomfortable conversations with people.
Yeah, that takes a lot to be balanced internally and to have that innate knowing to do that. Yeah. So, what are some lessons that you've learned from real estate that can apply to someone who's just listening in, that can apply to life? And
But if you've never done real estate or you're thinking about starting a business, don't think that you have to know how to do everything off the bat. I mean, I'm constantly learning new things. Before I was an agent, I never have done marketing. I've never done sales. Never wrote so many letters in my life. I probably wrote over 1,000 letters to people for my marketing, and just have fun with it. I mean, I like, part of the thing that seems so small, but I like doing is like designing flyers and marketing materials on Canva, and being able to say, yeah, I created that and I put it out in the world. It feels really good, you know?
yeah, it brings out a whole other side of creativity and just taking an idea and making it into reality.
Especially since I never really considered myself an artistic person. I can't even pick up a pen or a paintbrush and create a beautiful thing. But on the graphic design side of things, photography, I feel like I really excel. So you do a lot of that in real estate as you get bigger and more experience. Instead of relying on others to do those things for you, being able to do it yourself saves you a lot of money. And you can actually take pride in something like developing a flyer or a pamphlet or a brochure or a little booklet with information or business cards. Being able to have all that developed yourself will save you money, but then when you give it to somebody, it means so much more that you took the time to make it versus paying somebody else to do it for you.
Yeah, yeah. And then you're like, this is my representation, my brand, everything.
Yeah.
One thing that stands out to me when we had our conversation, and I work with different real estate agents across the country with what I do in my business, and I've never once heard anyone else say that they help people actually move.
Mm. See, that's something I feel like it kind of goes hand in hand. If you're placing somebody in a new home or you're moving them, to build that relationship, because real estate is all about relationships. It's contracts and relationships that I feel like are the two big things. If you can say, hey, if to save you money, 3, 4, 500, $1,000, if you want, I can help move your stuff. I feel like that creates a friendship that's going to last a long time.
Yeah, that's that's just so it's a bonding experience and also when you're in transition, it means a lot to have someone help you actually physically do that.
Yeah, it's not easy, but I'll help move anything that isn't a piano,
Yeah,
a safe, or antiques. I don't want
nice.
to touch any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No way. No way, Jose. Yeah, that's
No way.
so. I have one more question for you, and that
Sure.
is if someone were to describe you as a realtor in one sentence, what would you hope they would say?
That's a good one. I'd say that he has golden retriever energy and that he was willing to fight tooth and nail to give me the best deal as possible.
Love it. Beautiful. Thank you,
Yeah,
Ethan. And
you're welcome.
where can people find you? Are you on different social medias? Is there a website, phone number? We can attach that too in this video, but where is the best place for people to find you?
Well, on my Instagram and TikTok, it's just at Cortez Sells Colorado.
Nice.
The Facebook is a bunch of letters and numbers, so I won't be able to kind of, rattle that off. But primarily Instagram and TikTok
Beautiful.
at Cortez Sells Colorado. And then there was also one kind of story I like to share as well if we have time.
Please, yes.
Yeah, so it kind of highlights. It goes back to that transaction with my client who is going through a separation. The thing about condos can be kind of tricky. Um, Luckily, we put in an offer on the property right after a lawsuit was settled. It was a newer build, built in 2021, and the HOA had actually sued the builder for not installing the deck railings on all the units up to code. And so for
Mm.
about 2 years prior to me and my client getting involved, there was ongoing litigation and that had closed about 6 months prior to us putting in an offer. And then in the time between when the lawsuit closed to when we got involved and put in an offer on the condo, construction company was ongoing, with repairs to fix the deck railing on every single unit. And the thing about condos is when a lender lends on a condo, they're looking at things like a special assessment, meaning if the HOA is assessing any of the tenants or the owners of any damages or repairs in the future. So the lender wants to know, hey, like they're going to
Mm.
assess $30,000 to fix like some doors or $100,000 to put new roofs on the buildings. That's one of the things that the lender wants to know. And then if there's any ongoing repairs, they want to know, has the repairs been completed? How far along are the repairs? And the thing that made that transaction really tricky that I was doing a lot of legwork of talking to attorneys, calling the HOA, and the HOA in that property was on the way out. Like they were days away from being switched to a different HOA, so they had kind of checked out. So they were really hard to get a hold of and work with. But I spent a lot of time on the phone talking to attorneys, trying to get scope of work documents, the litigation documents, so I could provide that to the lender. And the lender, they're working with a ton of other clients, so they couldn't spend this time, even though they're the ones who needed it to close the loan. But that was, kind of where I like to shine and say, I took the time to hunt down all this information, talk to attorneys and HOAs and reconstruction companies to try to get the scope of work, what percentage of the project is done, what's been completed, what needs to be done, when's it going to be done. Talking to the city because their permit had expired, and we thought they were going to be done when the permit expired, but they renewed it. And there was just a lot that went into that condo purchase. And you think condos are easier because they're smaller, but there's a lot more that goes into it than sometimes a single family home.
Wow. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just all the moving parts, the building being multiple ownership. I mean, all of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of actors in that
Yeah.
transaction that I'm trying to track down all this information for my client. And
Dang.
on his side of it, he's just hearing like, oh, it's going good, like we're gonna close on this date. But on my side of it, I'm running around like there's like the building's on fire, trying to make sure that it all comes together so that I can deliver on my promise.
Yeah, he's really lucky that he was working with you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really awesome, Ethan. I mean, that's stuff I've not even heard about. I didn't know all this existed with the complexity of condo sales and
Yeah.
just going back to the builder and code and it's another ball of worms for sure.
And part of being an agent is that you should be informing your clients that are looking for condos. that, hey, when you buy this property, a month from closing, you're going to have this repair bill for a property that you just started, and you know, having them prepare for that. And if they don't know about it, then you're kind of doing a disservice to them.
Regarding condo sales, there was a tip that you wanted to share with us that's different from just selling a single family home.
Oh, sure. Yeah, the thing about condos that makes it more complicated than a home is, in order to close your loan with the lender, they have to know if there's any special assessments that will be assessed to the homeowners prior to closing, so that they can factor that into your monthly payment and if you can afford it, as well as the client knowing, like, hey, after the closing in a week or a few months, I'm going to be getting this bill to fix the roof in a property that I just moved into. And the lender also wants to know if there's anything structurally wrong with the property, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be the unit you're buying. It could be the building that the unit's in, or a building that is separate but in the same community,
Oh,
because
wow.
that's something that they still look at.
Oh, wow.
Even though it might not affect your unit, the lender will ask that information, and they need that in writing in order to close the loan, that there's nothing wrong with the unit, the building, or any other building in the HOA.
Wow. So that's also a myth buster because sometimes you might think, oh, it's just a condo. It's an easier sale or purchase if you wanted to get involved with that or invest or live in a condo. Actually, you still have to, you know, be mindful of all these other responsibilities. That's that's interesting. Okay.
And it could take a while to get some of those HOA docs. As soon as an agent puts an offer in on a property and it gets accepted, they should be requesting those HOA docs on day one, because some HOAs like to drag their feet. They're not very communicative, and it could take 7 to 14 days to get those HOA docs back.
Wow.
And usually within the first week, we're ordering inspection, which could be $500. If we can get ahead of knowing if there's any issues with the HOA before we start wasting the client's money with an inspection, then we can look at it and maybe terminate if the HOA docs don't come back clean.
Mm, nice. It's good that you have their backs. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, it's a lot,
It's a
but
lot.
you know, once you kind of pierce the veil of like uncertainty, it just kind of like muscle memory. Just as soon as you put an offer in, request it.
Yeah. Just like clockwork. You're just on top of it, behind the scenes.
Well, I learned through trial and error. So,
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Ethan, for sharing this knowledge with us today and just being on the call.
well, thank you for having me. I appreciate you taking the time.
You bet.